So here's the setup I have. It's just a tube of paint.
Right over here, I'm painting the outline of the object. The point of this is to get all the angles and drawing correct before I start blocking in color. I'm using burnt umber on a bristle brush, and the drawing comes out pretty good right away, and so I'm happy with it and move on pretty quickly. It's a simple object. One thing though is I think the cap was at a slightly tilted angle, which comes back to haunt me a little bit later on. Over here, I switch to a soft sable brush and start rendering the brightest plane of the tube, just by blocking it in. And it looks a little bit dark on the canvas, but that's actually okay, for a reason I'll get into very shortly. So at this point I have three planes of the object painted. We have the plane that's facing us, the plane that's rolling underneath the object, and the plane that's rolling away from us. And now you can start comparing. Is this color correct? Is this value correct? Etc. Here I am adding in the highlight. It's really satisfying. So essentially, you don't want to use pure white paint. You want to kind of color your highlights. And you have the room to like sort of color down like this because we've made everything else a little bit darker before. The basic principle is that paint has a limited range and we want to save our lightest paint for the brightest brights, which are the highlights. This section was a lot of fun to paint. You have the cap, which has all kinds of cool texture on it, and you have the top of the tube, which has a sort of metallic reflection. I did, however, put in the background pretty early, just so I could use it to chip into the cap to correct the drawing inaccuracies that I had done earlier. So now that I've finished painting the cap, you're going to see me sort of wrap the background all the way around towards the bottom section of the tube of paint. And the reason I do this is actually just so you kind of naturally like paint your way over there. You're not just like jumping from one place to the other. And you keep all the comparisons you've made so far in mind when you paint like this. In retrospect, I wish I'd used cooler colors for the background. I haven't talked a lot about it in this still life in particular. It's probably not the best example of it, but you want to keep in mind all the edges you paint. Is this edge going to be really hard? Is this edge going to be really soft? And get used to making hard and soft edges with your brush. You're gonna see me struggle with this bottom section of the tube. Basically the tube's being rolled into itself by this key I have in, and it's creating a complex array of small planes that are being squeezed. Some of them have highlights, there's soft shadows, there's hard shadows. It's a big mess. And I get it to a state that I think is acceptable for this duration of a painting, but it's not like totally accurate at all. This key actually has branding on the side of it, which I wanted to get in, and just sort of suggests that there's text there with these little marks, and then I go back in and then I darken them a little bit because they were way too bright when I initially put them down. At this point, the surface is at a state that I'm happy with. So all the planes are working, there's the little undulations and sort of bumps in the tube that are suggested. And now I can start working on surface texture. So abstracting text and branding has always been very satisfying to me in paint. I'm trying to paint the Utrecht logo right now. The most important elements I'm thinking about are the sort of crossing of the T, which adds a horizontal element which isn't present in any of the other letters, and the giant italicized U. If I get those two elements just sort of down, then the rest of it's going to fall into place. I'm adding the flecks of paint that are on the surface of the tube. Some of these I ended up not liking, so I changed them. I'm also adding some of the highlights on the tube itself. Here's more text. Always fun to paint. At this point, I was getting incredibly hungry. I hadn't eaten lunch yet, and it was getting late in the afternoon, so I just wanted to be done with it. So I'm just gonna go through quickly, get all the text down, and you're gonna see me just fill in the background in a bit with a large bristle brush. My biggest regret for this painting is probably the background color that I chose. I wish I had chosen a cooler color, and I could go back and change it, but I probably won't. But basically, whenever I have a warm object, I like to have a cool background and vice versa.
So here's the final result. And now I'm gonna go eat lunch.